What's up, everyone? Connor O'Hanlon here for another episode of the Greater Society podcast. And today we have quite a few things to go over, especially things that aren't very clear. And a lot of weird, new January brings new governments, and the forming of new governments bring parliamentary tricks and rules that most of us will never, ever have to deal with. But we are seeing them unfold throughout the country. We see it in Pennsylvania and we see it in DC. But today we're going to be covering a wide variety of things. And starting off, I'm actually reversing what I originally intended to do. But starting off, we're going to talk about Damar Hamlin and his injury in the NFL game on Monday, the importance of it, and the not political implications. It's the strong arming of politics into the NFL and the reaction to what should be just considered something to be a tragedy. People injecting toxicity, and we'll get to it. Then we're going to talk about the Speaker of the House race in Washington, D.C., what is going on there. And obviously right now we don't even have a conclusion to that, but we're going to be talking about up until basically the next vote will be called. So you will have a nice little lead up if you hadn't watched anything going into the 8 o'clock session tonight. Then we're going to be talking about Andrew Tate being arrested and owned basically by Greta Thunberg, which may or may not have been a part of his arrest. But whether or not she actually, led into that, it's not all that important. It's just something to follow up on, as we have talked about Andrew Tate in the past, and I want to, bring that story to its conclusion. And then lastly, as I alluded to, in coming out of Philadelphia, we're gonna watch a video of Malcolm Kenyatta discussing what's happening in Harrisburg. And what happened in Harrisburg with the Speaker of the House race there, given that the Democrats legitimately won a majority, and yet we did not get a Democratic Speaker of the House. But with all that being said, while you guys are here, make sure to hit the subscribe button down below if you are watching on YouTube, and if you are listening, make sure to hit the follow button. And if you want to go see my beautiful face, come on over to YouTube, where you can watch clips every Monday, every Friday, and the live show every Wednesday at 7. But with that, we're going to dive right into what happened with Damar Hamlin. So on Monday Night Football, the Bills were playing against the Bengals, a legitimate, very big game for the political implications, the postseason implications. I'm used to saying political. The postseason implications for the NFL season leading into week 18, I believe, which is the final week of games of the regular season. Now, what happened was, on a pretty ordinary play, Damar Hamlin, number 3 for the Bills, a special teams player, got into a collision. He's a cornerback as well, defensive player. He was the defender, not the guy running the ball. Hit the Bengals, receiver, and proceeded to get up, and then collapsed on the field. Hamlin was unconscious and had to be resuscitated twice, allegedly on the field. He was administered CPR for 9 minutes on the field. There's nothing more to that other than just saying the tragedy that it is. As a former football player, as a contact sports athlete, things like this are extremely rare, but they do happen. When I was in high school, we had someone that was almost paralyzed. I've had scares with being with my neck and my spine, but nothing to this extent. Although, to be also to be fair, when we were in high school at the time, kids in high school died from dehydration during training camps. So these things are absolutely tragic, and they happen. And the reason why we're talking about it today is twofold. First, and I couldn't find the TikTok video of it, but I will because I TikTok doesn't have the ability to go back in your history and find it. But I saw a video of, I think it was just another sports analyst on a podcast from yesterday discussing this and talking about the players' rights and the players' union. And I think it's important to note on a progressive show like this, talking about unionization, talking about workers' rights, that NFL players, despite making, what might seem like insane amounts of money, Hamlin made less than $1 million a year, which, okay, yeah, to the average person, that sounds like an insane amount of money regardless, but he makes about $865,000 a year. But this is the type of thing that these folks put on the line. The risk to their body, to their health, to their necks, to their brains is insane. And it is such a high level of contact sport, and the trauma caused, we've learned about CTE, and this is something that the guy in the video put very concisely, but we've learned about CTE, and you can only find out that someone has CTE post-mortem. So after someone dies, you can look at their brain to see CTE, and that's just a traumatic brain injury that leads to dysfunction in the brain. Now, what happened with Hamlin is that he had a cardiac event. So they didn't say it specifically, but the equivalent functionally of a heart attack. Which, again, is rare. It's extremely rare, but does happen in sports. It does happen in contact sports. It happens in baseball. It happens in hockey when people get hit in the chest or they get hit in the neck or in the head. This analyst really put it succinctly in saying the NFL really needs to step up. And he didn't fully go and say that the players' union needs to demand X, Y, and Z, but the players' union in their most recent bargaining agreements took cuts to pensions, took cuts to longer-term healthcare plans and the pensions for players. And the thing is that a lot of players, not all of them, not even the majority of them, but a good chunk will be unable to do any sort of physical job after they're done playing in the NFL. There is a good chunk that will be unable to do most any other job because of the traumatic brain injuries that they receive. That is not the majority, but there are people like that. So ensuring that there is a longevity to protecting players, the same way that the UFC should, by the way, which is another whole issue. The only reason we're talking about this is because, politically speaking, workers' rights are at risk here, and they have been consistently. You can look at the MLB, you can look at the NFL, you can look at the NHL, NBA, all of these different organizations. What is the common thread? Their owners are all billionaires that own the companies that get billions of dollars from taxpayer money to pay for the stadiums that they reap the benefits from, and then they socialize the costs for. They refuse to pay for the health care, the proper long-term health care that the players need. That is an injustice to every single player that ends up needing that help. It's an injustice to people that may end up, the families that may end up needing the help. We look at something that happened here, and a guy that is younger than me. I am 26 years old. Damar Hamlin is 24 years old. And he may need, hopefully he doesn't, we don't know what he may need. We don't know what condition really he's in at this point. He may need millions of dollars in help. And the NFL says they're going to do this, that, and the other thing. But the NFL is a corporation driven by profits and profits alone. The NFL is a corporation driven by profits that is impacted and influenced by billionaires that own teams that only care about profits and profits alone. Their greed puts players at risk, that players, of course, are accepting some level of risk by doing the job, by playing the game. But if we are to expect that players continue to and families support kids playing these types of sports, and we're not going to just sit back and let everyone get these traumatic brain injuries and risk dying, and these traumatic blowing up your legs basically with ACL tears, Achilles ruptures, your shoulders, your necks, spines. I mean, this is not the first time that a serious injury has happened and has left somebody close to death. And we don't know that Hamlin's going to be okay. So that's the first part of this. And that's why we're talking about it on a political show. The second part is the extrapolation of the far right, and I'm going to look at two examples with you, of claiming immediately. This is a tweet. I'm going to show you the first tweet. This is a tweet, January 2nd. That's Monday. The game is at functionally, 8:30 or whatever. At 9:52 p.m., Charlie Kirk tweets out, This is a tragic, which I think he means a tragedy, an all too familiar sight right now. Athletes dropping suddenly. So what everyone starts to realize is that he's talking about the COVID-19 vaccine. Charlie Kirk is claiming, without any evidence, that this was impacted because, first of all, Charlie Kirk has no idea if Damar Hamlin is vaccinated. He has no knowledge if he had COVID before. He has no impact. He has no knowledge of any sort of medical background for this player. He has no chart that says that he has a predisposition to X, Y, or Z. He has nothing that says that anything is linked to COVID-19. But this first thing, within an hour of this guy getting hurt, and people don't even know that he's alive at this point, because remember, he had to be resuscitated, which means he was practically dead on the football field twice. This guy wants to claim, without any shred of evidence, right off the bat, that because he collapsed after getting hit in the chest, that the COVID-19 vaccine is the case. He's not explicitly saying, but he doubles down and he claims that this is exactly that. Now, let's take a look at jackass number 2, Tucker Carlson.
What don't we know? Well, what we don't know could fill volumes, starting with why Damar Hamlin had a heart attack on a football field. We do not know the answer, and there is no way to know the answer. We're not going to lie to you and pretend we do know the answer.
Right. Until you posit the COVID-19 vaccine, because that's exactly what he's about to do.
But that has not stopped many others from lying to you. Hamlin was still lying on the field receiving CPR when self-described medical experts in the media, people with no demonstrated medical ethics at all, effectively witch doctors, decided to use his
no medical ethics, he said, let alone what these guys are doing with no medical expertise. So he's calling people that are talking about this at the time, stating that there's no evidence that a COVID-19 vaccine would cause this, saying that they don't have ethics, versus people like him with no expertise in any sort of matter, which I don't have either, but I'm not claiming one way or the other. You can't just come out and start saying, oh, COVID-19 vaccine caused this. You know what's more likely to cause some traumatic issue? Getting jammed in the chest with somebody's helmet running full speed at you. You know what also is more likely to cause issues, which these freaking bozos don't ever say, was actually having COVID-19. But they can't help themselves. They're salivating. I would never be talking about this on this show if these jackasses wouldn't be salivating and biting, chomping at the bit to just pinpoint and say, yeah, well, look, we're not saying that it's the COVID-19 vaccine, but it could be, without any evidence.
Tragic, life-threatening injuries, an opportunity to spread still more propaganda about the COVID shots. It could not have been.
He's saying propaganda as in saying that it doesn't cause heart attacks. Not what he's doing, which is actually spreading propaganda about the COVID-19 vaccines.
The shot, they told you. Shut up. But they're lying. They don't know that. They don't know anything more than we know, which is effectively nothing. We can't say it was the shot. We can't say it wasn't the shot. We don't know whether he got the shot. We don't know, and neither do they.
At least he's admitting that part of it. But that's the thing, though. He's not really admitting much because in reality, he is just postulating this question. He is just, throwing it out there. What's the harm in asking the question, right? If it's just a question, it can't be harmful. And yet, again, it just always continues to boil down to this. It is ludicrous. It is disrespectful. It is something that I still can't understand. And I was, I'm editing a big project that I've been working on, and I read a part about it that I wrote a long time ago, actually, about a year ago, and talking about Tucker Carlson and talking about this guy that is a blatant liar. And he consistently he's been given a mainstream platform that, again, talk about greed. He's a millionaire getting paid by billionaires to spread propaganda that you hate and fear your neighbors. You hate and fear medicine or experts or any of this stuff, but you would listen to this guy that used to wear a bow tie until he got made fun of by Jon Stewart. It's a joke. These people should be ashamed of themselves. There's other sports analysts that really put the sport above the safety and well-being of Damar Hamlin, and they should be ashamed of themselves too. But with that, we're gonna pivot from our first sports segment functionally. This is functionally sports for me. And I see Sam in the chat talking about McCarthy ordering pizza. But this functionally, the Speaker of the House race, if you want to call it that, has been my sporting event for the last 2 days. I am actually starting a new job on the 16th, so I have a break right now. So today, I spent an inordinate amount of time watching this after spending this morning writing. And I spent so much time, even if I'm just doing something else, I have it on my other monitor and just watching this race or this breakdown of a race. It shouldn't be a race, but so functionally, I'm going to catch you guys all up so that if at 8 o'clock when the House comes back, you can watch it and enjoy it like everybody else if you haven't been already watching it like, Sam and I have. And by the way, if you haven't already, you can go back and check out my video with Sam and see how our predictions came of that episode. I think it's well worth it. And maybe you can listen at a 2x speed because the election happened. You would know what happened, but check that out. So, what's happening here in Washington, D.C., and it happens every 2 years, is a new Congress is being sworn in. And when the new Congress is sworn in, the first order of business, and this happens, as we will talk about next, it happens in state houses across the country as well, is the first point of order is electing a Speaker of the House. And once you have the Speaker of the House then brings roll calls for swearing people in. And then once people are sworn in, they agree to the rules of the Congress. So this would be the 118th Congress. So they would agree to a certain rule set, which we will talk about here in a second as well. A rule set that they will abide by for the next 2 years. So you basically set up, the ground rules of everything from January of 23 to January of 25, when either they would flip the control of the House, or the same party might have the control of the House, but they might come up with different rules. There might be a different speaker, all that stuff, right? We all remember when Nancy Pelosi was running for speaker back in 2018. Specifically, in 2020, it was a little bit less controversial, but in 2018, there was a fight there. Nothing as crazy as this, because Trump-backed Kevin McCarthy, who has served as kind of one of the highest ranking officials he was the House Minority Leader for the Republicans in the 117th Congress. He has been seeking, and apparently, I've learned this by, just being around for the last couple of years, but also people really bringing it up, during this vote, is that McCarthy has had the ambition to specifically become the Speaker of the House for a very long time. It has been his ambition. It has been all that he has wanted, to become the Speaker of the House. Now, if you live in Bucks County, a lot of you maybe don't, but if you live in Bucks County in Pennsylvania here, you will also notice that our congressperson, Brian Fitzpatrick, has been buddy-buddy with McCarthy for a very long time, which is interesting because McCarthy is a far-right Republican. So it's an interesting dynamic, because he has allies from the so-called moderate wing, like Fitzpatrick. And I say so-called because Brian Fitzpatrick is not a moderate. But compared to some of, I'll be honest, at least compared to Marjorie Taylor Greene, he is somewhat in the middle. However, both Fitzpatrick and Marjorie Taylor Greene are supportive of McCarthy. So what's the issue? Well, if you rewind back to last week's, it might be last week, it might be 2 weeks ago, episode, where we talked about Lauren Boebert and Matt Gaetz causing an issue for the Speaker of the House. And that is because there is a contingency of the Freedom Caucus, which is an absolute BS name, because the Freedom Caucus does not give a damn about freedom, but whatever, that's what they're called. That caucus has a group of people that are adamant about not supporting Kevin McCarthy, and it is not because he is not conservative enough. It is not because he is not moderate enough. It is because they do not like him. It is a personal gripe that they are couching in rules change that they wanted, or committee positions that they wanted. Now, I'll remind you, and this is my theory. I don't know that this is fact, but there are... Siri wanted to hop in there. I don't know that this is my theory. This is a working theory. But recall, after some of the craziness around Marjorie Taylor Greene came out in early 2021, she was stripped of all of her committee positions. So when people are confused by this, I think it's very obvious transactional leadership to bring my UPenn grad school class in here. Transactional leadership being, basically I'll do this if you do that. And she probably has been guaranteed and given a certain leverage to be on certain committees, specifically the ones to talk about Hunter Biden's nudes and investigate all that nonsense, and the laptop and Hillary's emails. And that is why she's supporting McCarthy, because I don't think that she has the same sway and pull with some of the other people that might end up being the moderate, and I'm putting that in quotes for anyone listening, pick. Because she is a lunatic. So, that is my working theory around why certain far right people in the Republican Party are so supportive of McCarthy without breaking. But like I said, and this is also why I think it's pretty clear. Like, people like Matt Gaetz and Lauren Boebert have already been serving on committees. The Republicans claim that there is no issue of seniority. It's about picking the right person for the right committee, and that's not the case. They just pick people on seniority, like the Democrats do. And whether or not that's right, I don't think it's right, but that is what happened, and that's how we got big Bernie guy, but that's how we got Bernie being the chair in the last Senate session for the budget. That's good, and sometimes it's bad, right? But they're changing the way that these committees work to appease certain people. But Matt Gaetz and Lauren Boebert were never stripped of their committee positions. They were never taken away and pushed in the corner over there. They were darlings of the social media right wing. So they have formed this contingent that have voted against Kevin McCarthy over and over and over and over and over and over again. I had to make sure I did it right. 6 times. So I'm going to bring up the vote here. So we're going to run through this real quick. So you'll see Hakeem Jeffries here. Hakeem Jeffries is the new leader of the House Democratic caucus. I have my criticisms of Hakeem Jeffries being specifically that he's pretty right-wing for a New York Democrat. And again, the New York Democratic Party has really dropped the ball. However, I think there's some logic right now to just unify. And I think there's actually a lot of logic around just unifying and supporting Hakeem Jeffries. You see throughout the roll calls, you don't see no Democrat is breaking away so far from voting for Hakeem Jeffries. And I think that's a smart idea. It shows unity, and it shows the absurdity and the clown show that is what's happening on the Republican side. Again, if we had the opportunity as Democrats to actually elect a Speaker of the House, I wouldn't pick Hakeem Jeffries to be my like ideal pick to be Speaker, but if that was the case, I'd pick Hakeem Jeffries over any Republican any day, right? So it's not where we're at right now. So for right now, all the Democrats supporting Hakeem Jeffries. That's why you see 212, 212, 212, 212, 212, 212 every single time, because every single time he gets every single Democratic vote. Okay, what happened here on the first ballot? We got 203 for McCarthy. Now, this total in the other is actually not correct. The vote total in the other, I believe, was 18 when it started. So ignore this other and present column here. But the first one, 203, 212. Okay. What happened in the other was there was... sorry. This is... if I was in there, I would vote for Jeffries. Yes. Like, if I was in the chamber right now, I'd be voting for Jeffries. If I had a real shot at picking the Speaker, I think that we would be working. There would be working theory, but probably Hakeem Jeffries would end up getting it regardless. So you end up. This is the one thing that we should take away as people that are progressive, in saying there is a time and a place to leverage your power. There's a time and a place to leverage your influence and get the things that you need to get. You have to fight and vie for yourself, and not just yourself, the progressive caucus, to get committees, to get committee placements, and to get chairmanships, because those things are important. You decide what becomes law, basically. You propose legislation through the committees, and that goes through the floor. But that's besides the point. It's just pointing out that we can learn from this stuff. We shouldn't be as absurd as this, but we can learn to say, okay, you want AOC's vote for this? Well, you're going to have to make certain people, you're going to have to make Jayapal chairwoman of this committee. And like, it's oversimplification, but negotiation is key. And knowing how to actually come into the fight, knowing it's a fight. So this other, I'm just realizing, I believe this other three is noting that three other people, I believe, got votes on it, which it should be 18, I think. But in that first ballot, you had Jim Jordan getting votes, you had Lee Zeldin getting votes, and a couple other people getting one or two. So what happened in the second round is that you get McCarthy 203, 212 for Jeffries, and again, what happens? I didn't explain this, but what happens here is you need to get 218 so that you get a simple majority of the voting members of the House of Representatives. 212, although it's the plurality, does not hit the threshold of a majority, and thus they go to another round of voting until somebody gets the majority. So when you get to the second ballot, what happened was 203 McCarthy, 212 Jeffries, and then the other 19, I believe it is, at that time, was all for Jim Jordan. All of them were for Jim Jordan. Now, I'll point out that Jim Jordan voted for Kevin McCarthy. And in the third ballot, what happened was Jim Jordan nominates McCarthy. And then what happened was it went 202, 212, and then they switched and they got more people to vote. They got one other person to vote for Jim Jordan. And then the fourth one, that happened today. They had a vote, one person vote present, which this was after voting to not convene for another vote right away. So what they had happened was that Mondaire Jones on CNN said that this woman was not far right, but she is from my understanding of the clips I've seen of her and the interviews of her, she's the only Ukrainian Republican in the House, but she seems pretty far right. But she voted, I think her last name is Sparks, voted present in this vote, which basically means that McCarthy had lost a vote after what he had expected to either hold or end up gaining. But this has been the vote for the last three times. There's been no change for the Democrats, no change for the Republicans, and no change for the, I don't like that Jake Tapper calls them the rebels, but the extremists, one might call them. But the thing is that you're starting to see moderate contingent of the party starting to get upset. And they're talking with each other. And you can see it. It's really cool, actually, if you watch this stuff. Because there is no Speaker of the House of Representatives, C-SPAN has access to the cameras, and they can point it at all the happenings in the actual chamber. So you see, oh, Matt Gaetz is going to talk to AOC. What could that be about? Oh, Brian Fitzpatrick is talking to Matt Gaetz, and Lauren Boebert is going over here. And then it's like you can see everything, and it's actually incredible to watch what actually happens on the House, because people are surprised that the far right people are going to talk with, AOC or, Ayanna Pressley or somebody like in the squad. And that, you can see Brian Fitzpatrick going to Kevin McCarthy and asking what he wants him to do. And like, you can see all the intricacies that you just don't normally see on TV, but they do happen. These negotiations happen all the time. Democrats and Republicans actually talk to each other all the time. It's interesting to see that. Now, you'll see here, we have a video. This is from yesterday. This is Hakeem Jeffries' response to what had been, I think, 3 failed votes as of yesterday.
If you are looking for a willing partner and they approached you with a consensus candidate,
it's quiet, but they're saying if the Republicans basically came to you with a consensus candidate, what would you do?
Is more moderate, maybe open to negotiating with you and getting some of these legislators for a Republican.
Looking for a willing partner to solve problems for the American people, not save the Republicans from their dysfunction. We need a partner in governance to build upon the incredible progress that we made for the American people over the last few years. By the way, with a similar majority. But under the great leadership of Speaker Pelosi, Democrats united, progressives, New Dems, and Blue Dogs united we accomplished extraordinary things on behalf of the American people. The American Rescue Plan saved the economy from a deep recession. Shots in arms, money in pockets, kids back in school. Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, creating millions of good-paying jobs for the American people, fixing our crumbling bridges, roads, tunnels, airports, our sewer and water systems, our mass transportation systems.
What's also interesting on that point, while Hakeem Jeffries is pointing this out, is that during the votes today, Biden was literally in Kentucky on a bridge, which I used to walk over from Cincinnati into Kentucky, I believe in Lexington, Kentucky, where I used to go to the movie theater over there. And there's a comic book shop that I used to walk over that bridge to go to. And from Cincinnati to Kentucky. And it's because he was celebrating, which, take it for what it is. He was celebrating with Mitch McConnell, and I'm drawing a blank on the Ohio senator that he had there as well. But the two of them celebrating this big bipartisan infrastructure plan because they're fixing the bridge, which is bread and butter, infrastructure. That is important to note. But the whole time while they were doing the vote today, they kept showing this like split screen of here's Joe Biden in Kentucky, celebrating bipartisanship, while back in Washington, D.C., this party can't even get anything done because they can't even elect their own speaker.
And ensure high-speed internet access in every single community. Gun safety legislation for the first time in 30 years that will save lives and make our neighborhoods safer. The CHIPS and Science Act to bring domestic manufacturing jobs back home to the United States of America, and the Inflation Reduction Act to strike a decisive blow against the climate crisis, set our planet on a sustainable trajectory forward, lower energy costs, strengthen the Affordable Care Act, lower health care costs, and drive down the high price of life-saving prescription drugs for millions of Americans. And those are just the highlights.
Yes. So that is just the highlights, is what is Hakeem Jeffries is pointing out, which is a good messaging. And I see in the chat Jordan asks who would be my pick. The thing is that there isn't a clear progressive candidate, and that's kind of the problem. I would say someone like Pramila Jayapal, who has been the chair of the Progressive Caucus, could be somebody. But the thing is that to get a consensus, you need to get people that are less progressive than us to come together. And Democrats aren't so easily swayed. I would say before I saw the comments today that somebody like Ro Khanna, who was born and raised here in Bucks County but is in the Silicon Valley, because of the way this is something that people don't really talk about, but the reason why speakers of the House like Kevin McCarthy is from California, or like Chuck Schumer is from New York as the majority leader. And now Mitch McConnell is an exception, but that's because of his ability to, I'm going to put it in quotes, legislate, but to be effective as a legislator. But in general, you see usually the Speaker of the House or the leader of each party being from one of these coastal states is because their ability to raise money. So in reality, Hakeem Jeffries is Nancy Pelosi like Jr. And if you like Nancy Pelosi, then Hakeem Jeffries is the exact person you would want, because she basically, I don't want to use the word groomed, but created this pathway for him to become the speaker. There is something to be said about having one of the most successful Speaker of the House, take you under her wing and showing you the ropes. But I also don't think that Nancy Pelosi is all that progressive. I don't think that Hakeem Jeffries is all that progressive. And to actually pass progressive legislation, you have to have someone that is willing to whip the votes. And, there's the whip in the Progressive Caucus and all that stuff, but it's a little weedy at this point. But there is not a consensus candidate in any of the progressive wings. So as of right now, that's why I'm saying, like, there's no reason to be picking fights if you're a progressive Democrat right now, right? Like Eric said in the chat, if I was in DC right now, yeah, I'd just be casting my vote for Hakeem Jeffries because it's showing unity and then it's exemplifying the dysfunction on the other side. But if we're talking 2024, 2026, 2028, I don't think it's so clear cut that it should just be Hakeem Jeffries because Nancy Pelosi said it should be. This Generation X centrist Democrat is a type of corporatist Democrat that, people, progressives, I should say, have issue with for the corporatism. There are specific issues that could come up in these votes that could be issues. Now, would it be historic to have Hakeem Jeffries become the speaker? Yes, it would be. But that's not the point. That's not exactly the point. So my pick would be irrelevant almost because I would pick somebody in the Progressive Caucus and it wouldn't be somebody that would get a consensus as of right now. Because nobody is challenging Hakeem Jeffries. So, Ro Khanna and Pramila Jayapal. But Ro Khanna also said, he's kind of hinted at, this potential of working with the Republicans on this vote. So I don't even know what he's doing. So I don't know. There's a lot of progressives that have not shown the backbone to become the speaker and be able to build that consensus. Love her or hate her, Nancy Pelosi didn't bring stuff to the floor without knowing where the votes were. That is what a speaker should do. I mean, that's why this is so embarrassing for Kevin McCarthy, is that he says he knew that he didn't have the votes. Then why are you bringing this vote over and over and over again? You're embarrassing yourself. You just keep losing. Everyone sees him losing over and over again. So, again, that's where it's like people look at Nancy Pelosi as this big progressive, icon. And, she's from California. She should be a progressive icon. She should be doing the most progressive things possible. She should be a leader and a thought leader in that. She really wasn't in many cases. She was an effective legislator and is an effective legislator because she's still in the House. And she is taking Hakeem Jeffries under her wing. But this is the same thing where it's like if we lack the ability to criticize our own party, then we're really not looking inwards that much. But speaking of people criticizing their own party, I watched this live and I thought this was interesting because Lauren Boebert, this is, I believe, the 5th vote, nominated Donalds, who is a first, I believe, is not even sworn in yet, as his first election that he won. I believe. It could be a second. I could be totally wrong. But I believe he's a new congressperson. And she is nominating him. And the biggest part here is at the end. And I will point it out if you don't pick up on it.
Republicans, including many moderates, have been impressed by Byron Donalds. They're impressed by his ability to work together. They respect his leadership. We see him as someone who can communicate what we are all wanting to do in this House to Americans. And he represents so much more than just his district in Florida. Many millions of Americans all over this nation praise the work and the leadership of Byron Donalds. So let's work together. Let's stop with the campaign smears and tactics to get people to turn against us, even having my favorite president call us and tell us we need to knock this off. I think it actually needs to be reversed. The president needs to tell Kevin McCarthy that, sir, you do not have the votes and it's time to withdraw. And with that, I yield. Thank you.
So there you go. And I don't know why these other videos started coming up immediately, but that is Lauren Boebert basically pushing back on Trump. Because remember, Trump supports McCarthy, saying, don't call me, saying I have to switch my votes, but call McCarthy and say he doesn't have the votes. Can't exactly argue against that. It's interesting because the cracks are showing underneath the MAGA movement, where it's like they're not necessarily just going to fall in line behind Trump because he says so. It's interesting to see, and I'm all here for the fight. And, as Democrats, as progressives, we can just hope that they tear each other apart and we can just keep doing our thing and hopefully pass something over the next 2 years. And if not, we got to keep getting people elected and note, okay, look at this dysfunctional party. Let's replace some of these people, like in Pennsylvania's 1st congressional district, or like Lauren Boebert, who barely won her re-election. These are winnable seats, and these are the things that we need to be looking at right now. So as we talk right now, we're about 15 minutes away from them reconvening on the House floor. So stay tuned. There is not a conclusion to this, and if you're watching this now, maybe in a day, maybe in 2 days, maybe in a week, we might know the answer, and I'll come back to you and talk about it. But until then, we are going to be up in the air on this. So with that, let us jump to just some good old-fashioned memery. I don't know why this all started, to be honest with you. Rewind back and remember the Manosphere and Andrew Tate and people like the Liver King and all these really cool, sick guys and Jordan Peterson and all these people and Joe Rogan that are really embracing, this is how a man is and all that stuff, and really flexing on all these people with their money and how cool they are. But Andrew Tate is the epitome of the Manosphere attitude. So I don't understand where this tweet comes from. I don't know why. I think Greta Thunberg, of course, being a climate activist, must have been talking about car emissions. But randomly, Andrew Tate, who was, of course, reinstated because of Elon Musk buying Twitter, tweets, "Hello, Greta Thunberg. I have 33 cars. My Bugatti has a W16 8.0 liter quad turbo. My 2 Ferrari 812 Competizione have 6.5 liter V12s. This is just the start." And sorry if you're a car person, I have no idea what this stuff is. And he says, "Please provide your email address so I can send you a complete list of my car collection and their respective enormous emissions." Ooh, look at this tough guy. So cool. So cool. So, of course, then Greta responds to him, it becoming one of the most liked, and of course, at Con O'Hanlon, you can follow me on Twitter. I like this tweet, of course, because I think this type of male energy is something that, literally is the definition of toxic masculinity and trying to be tough. This Andrew Tate was a professional kickboxer, I believe. And you don't have to act like this to be like, I'm cool, I'm tough, I'm whatever. You have money, cool. You're a good fighter, awesome. But he's just an asshole in this, and that's what makes it so insufferable. Now, add to the fact that there are, we'll get back to that in a second. But Greta responds, "Yes, please do enlighten me. Email me at smalldickenergy@getalife.com." So, obviously a joke. Obviously not something that this alpha male was going to take lightly. So, we get to Andrew Tate's response video in which he says this.
"Release some greenhouse gases. I'm obviously a stranger to online controversy. It's not something I often do. But now, the mainstream press is commenting on the fact that I was informing Greta that my very extensive car collection with internal combustion engines, which run on dead dinosaurs, have an enormous emission profile. And she...
this is this is what I don't understand. I don't understand why this started for this reason. Is because why are you trying to own a 19-year-old climate activist when you're a wanted criminal in Romania trying to get away from sex trafficking charges? But you're talking about all the cars you own and how much, if you just said, I own all these cars, good for you, buddy. But you're talking about the emissions and you're proud of the emissions? Why? It's the same thing as we're talking about last week with people on Tucker Carlson and libs of TikTok. Why are you proud, or why are you coming at this stuff with this malice? Why? Why does this exist?
replied by telling me her own email address. Greta's email address is, I have small dick energy. Why would that be your own email address, Greta? Strange. I mean, also, I don't want to assume her gender. It's 50-50, but it is what it is. I'm not actually mad at Greta. Please bring me...
He's definitely not mad. He swears he's not mad. He got publicly humiliated, but he swears he's not mad. He's recording himself smoking a cigar, talking about all this stuff, talking about how many cars and how many Ferraris and Bugattis he has, and he's going to bring pizza out here, but he's definitely not triggered.
Pizza and make sure that these boxes are not recycled.
Also, I noted this out on a Instagram post. Soiled pizza boxes aren't recyclable.
Thank you. So I'm not actually mad at Greta, right? Because she doesn't realize she's been programmed. She doesn't realize she's a slave of the Matrix. She thinks she's...
She doesn't... This, I just am going to explain this really fast, but the reason why these people, specifically Andrew Tate, other folks online, talk about the Matrix is because they are talking about us being bots and we're just being farmed and all this stuff, right? But someone like Andrew Tate has the red pill, which if you haven't seen the Matrix, Morpheus gives the red pill and the blue pill to what's his name, Keanu Reeves' character, and he gets to pick. The red pill will basically break you out of the Matrix. You can see what really life is like outside of the Matrix. You can be in control, but you can't go back, right? So Andrew Tate, of course, sells the red pill by you joining his Discord servers to become, a drop shipper on Amazon, or to be a cryptocurrency scammer or an NFT guy. All of this stuff, of course. Not how Andrew Tate made his money. Andrew Tate made his money by exploiting women and forcing them to, well, allegedly forcing them to produce content online of the nude type.
Doing good. Someone has sat her down and convinced her to try and convince you to beg your government to tax you into poverty to stop the sun from being hot.
That's exactly what she said.
And then, because I called her out on it, the global Matrix got this bot farm to like and retweet and all.
I thought Elon Musk got rid of the bots on Twitter. I thought because he bought it for $44 billion that he definitely didn't waste all of his money and definitely didn't lose $200 billion in wealth, the largest decrease in wealth in the history of the world. I thought there were no bots on Twitter anymore.
All this bot commenting to try and pretend that her telling me that she has a small dick and her own email address somehow teaches me a lesson. Welcome to a new episode of The Clown Show. But now I know, at least, that Greta, with a little hate-filled face.
So, making fun of her face, she has autism, so she has issues in social contexts, and that's why she reacts and has certain mannerisms. But yeah, go ahead. Again, this is like when Trump is making fun of a disabled reporter that I forget what he had exactly, but doing and mocking him publicly in a speech. But yeah, go ahead, Andrew Tate. Really, really masculine man here.
Bitter, sitting somewhere without the heating on, in the cold, little hat, shivering. Use my tweets, which is going to make my Twitter account far more fun into eternity.
That was true. That was true. It did make his Twitter account far more fun into eternity. Now, what happened next, and this is this is disputed. It's not super clear. But somehow, coincidentally, right after this video, and people, part of it I think might be a joke and part of it might be serious. I'm not really sure, but the Romanian government went to Andrew Tate's house in Romania and arrested him and his brother for sex trafficking crimes, allegedly. And he has been in jail. He's being held in jail. And it is very illustrative, I'll say, of what had been happening prior to Andrew Tate's rise to fame. It is illustrative of his scams. It is shining a light on the deviancy, I'll say, of people like this that want to act like they have everything all figured out. They want to act like they're just above everything. They're above you. You're a bot. You don't know what you're talking about. You're just part of the matrix for caring about the environment. While he gets to not care about anything, spread the red pill, paradoxically tell you to sleep with all of these women. And of course, he's talking to men because he doesn't talk to women. But he's telling men to sleep with as many women as possible while also trying to look for women that don't sleep with a lot of men to marry because that's the way you have to do it. But he's not married because he was exploiting women to make his wealth. All of it is paradoxical. All of these red pill people are hypocrites. They're liars. They're scam artists. And he is the biggest one. So far, at least. So it's very, nice, I'll say, to see justice being dealt. And of course, being arrested does not mean that you are guilty of a crime. So we will wait and see the verdict of all of this and to actually find out the real facts of the case and to see, did him getting these pizza boxes really bring the Romanian authorities to him? I doubt that, but hey, it's possible. It just happened to coincide with it, so it's possible. The last thing I wanted to talk about tonight is, and I'm going to show a video. Malcolm Kenyatta is going to give us a good friend of the show, I'll say. I'll hype it up because, of course, he came on the show once. But this is a video from about 20 days ago because this is when this was starting. The issue was starting. And I think he is better at succinctly bringing this to light because he is intimately engaged with it, or he has been because he's an actual state rep. So we're going to talk about the Pennsylvania State House election of the Speaker of the House, and I'm going to let Malcolm explain to you what has been coming and what happened basically this week.
Representative Malcolm Kenyatta here, and I have a quick but critical update about what's happening in the Pennsylvania State House. As you may have heard, Democrats did well in Pennsylvania on Election Day. We won the governor's mansion, we flipped a U.S. Senate seat, and voters gave Pennsylvania Democrats a majority in the State House for the first time in over a decade, by one seat. Tragically, a member, Tony DeLuca, passed. And then two other colleagues were resoundingly elected to higher office, leaving 3 safe Democratic seats without a current member. Our majority leader, Joanna McClinton, moved quickly and
I don't know if he states it clearly, but I think it's just Summer Lee who got elected to Congress, and I'm drawing a blank on his name. Oh my God. Austin Davis, who's elected to be lieutenant governor. So those seats have been vacated to create this issue and of course the person that passed away.
As required by law, to schedule an election within 10 days of a vacancy. She did so at the earliest possible date. But because these 3 safe Democratic seats still need a representative to replace them, the Republicans have continued their anti-democratic agenda and are challenging Joanna issuing the writ of elections. As you might imagine, they want those elections to not be held as quickly as possible. They want them to be held as late as possible. giving Republicans a mirage majority in the state house while voters are chomping at the bit to have representation in Harrisburg in 3 safe Democratic areas. This is a travesty. This is a continuation of this anti-democratic agenda that we're seeing from House Republicans. And I'm urging everybody to speak up about it. Reach out to Brian Cutler in his office, on social media, and let him know that you're paying attention and that Pennsylvania voters don't want the majority they delivered to be stolen by people who don't respect their votes, who don't respect their voice.
So there you have it from friend of the show, State Representative Malcolm Kenyatta. However, you don't have to reach out to that the person that he's talking about necessarily, because in the State House. So again, for context, yesterday, State House and State Senate new members and old, people that were reelected were sworn in. Again, you vote for your house, you vote for the Speaker of the House right on the first day, and you establish the rules. This majority was a Democratic majority. But because of the death and because of Summer Lee and because of Austin Davis both winning, that vacated these seats, even in deep blue elections or seats. The elections and the special elections are not to be taken place yet. So with the vote, there was no deal struck to have Joanna McClinton become the Speaker, but instead we get this. Democrat turned independent wins Pennsylvania House leadership post with GOP support. I'll read now. A Democrat turned independent Pennsylvania state representative was elected Speaker of the House, the state's House of Representatives, on Tuesday, after several Republicans, I believe they say it here, but 20, I believe, joined with Democrats in a surprise turn of events. Pennsylvania State Rep Mark Rozzi, who has served as a Democratic member of the House for a decade, said he would govern as an independent after the closely divided chamber voted 115 to 85 to elect him Speaker. Rozzi is the first independent Speaker of the Pennsylvania House, and he says, "We've heard from the people of Pennsylvania, the press, and even members in this own building about how we need to find a new path forward. My entire career, I believe I have worked to find that path, and I'm honored to have your trust today to serve as Speaker." Now, I don't know the answer to this, and I'm curious what happens. I don't know the rules, and this is why I actually reached out to people on Twitter to see if I could get somebody to explain the potential of a post-special election. So, for context, the U.S. House of Representatives has a certain threshold. I believe it's 50. The rules that the incoming majority wants to do is 5 members can recall a vote of confidence, basically, on the Speaker of the House of Representatives. I don't know what the threshold is in Pennsylvania to have a vote to replace the Speaker of the House in the Pennsylvania State House. So what that means is, with Rozzi as the elected State House Speaker, what happens when the actual majority, literally the actual majority takes place, after these special elections are completed? I don't know the answer to that. And I wish I did, because it would be, I think it's very impactful to note, like, what we're supposed to expect from the State House. And Malcolm is right that the voters chose a Democratic majority. And I don't know, the other part of this is that I don't know that people knew that Rozzi was going to actually change his party from Democrat to Independent before this. I don't know all the specifics. And that's where it's like, because we have access to these people, and I would love to speak with 20 29th State Assembly Representative Tim Brennan or 144th Brian Monroe, who have both been elected here in Bucks County, and I would love to hear them actually come and explain the inner workings of what happened here. It would be very interesting. I see Sam's question. Is Rozzi expected to serve the entire session, or is it a temporary speakership someone we're discussing? That's what I don't know, and that's where it's like, it's pretty easy to understand what happened. Pretty easy to be like, okay, they came together and they got some votes from certain people. I'd be interested if some of my classmates, or I have one classmate who's a representative in Dauphin County. I would like to see who he voted for, or if he voted for Rozzi here. But I don't know, and that's kind of these questions that you haven't seen, I don't think, play out in the same level before. The erosion of democratic norms, in a good way and a bad way, it's happening. I should say in a good way or bad way. We don't know, if it's good or bad, but it's happening. I don't know that it's necessarily bad to have. This is kind of like the discussion I had at a Doyle Sun Democrats event. We had Fair Districts come and talk with our membership, and they talked about, bipartisanship and forming the rules and doing all this stuff, which, like, in theory sounds fine, but I think just based on who I can see in chat and who usually watches the show, and I know the demographics of the show, young voters aren't looking for, milquetoast centrist bipartisanship. In fact, I think even like, I had criticisms of Hakeem Jeffries in the beginning of this. I even believe that he, as somebody that I don't think is that progressive, but he understands the necessary fight. He understands the partisan nature of, we're not dealing with two parties that actually believe in the same democracy, the same republic, the same reality. Now, some folks then go and say, like, well, we should go and work with them on immigration, on healthcare, and on whatever, and capitulate to them. Because, like, in reality, we do have to work with them. We do have to come up with bills. But, like, that doesn't mean you have to give them everything, which is what ends up happening a lot of times, at least in Washington. With Pennsylvania Democrats taking the state house for the first time in over a decade, this is something that is unprecedented, obviously, because he is the first independent elected to be the speaker. I am very interested in following this, and if this is something that you want to, keep updated on and, like, see more of, definitely let me know. Definitely shoot me messages on Twitter or leave comments on our videos, because I'm going to be interested in following it. I would like to get a state representative on the show to discuss some of this stuff, because I think it's necessary for transparency's sake to understand the deal that has been struck here. Because I didn't vote for Democrats to have an independent be the speaker. I didn't vote for Democrats to have, just give their power away, right? So, and maybe they're not. Maybe they're not. We can be a little gracious here because it's the second day of the Congress, but it's not clear yet. It's not obvious. So I think questions need to be asked, and we need to be provided answers as voters and constituents. Because the scariest part, and I'll leave you with this, because if you need something to amp you up about the 2023 election cycle, the scary part about this, and I don't think it's going to happen, but it's possible, is bringing votes on constitutional amendments to the floor, having them pass, and then having them go to the ballot box in a primary election. So you've heard me talk about it before, but what could have happened if the Republicans got the majority in this Congress? They would have put a full ban, or as close to a full ban on abortion as they possibly could, as a constitutional amendment. The only way that a constitutional amendment passes, if it passes, the law passes in both chambers in two Congresses back to back, and then is voted on by the public. But we have to remember that it would be on the primary ballot, which has a lower turnout rate, and lower turnout rates almost always benefit the more conservative position, and they would be in control of the phrasing. And typically speaking, constitutional amendments are voted in the affirmative. So if it's phrased that is a yes/no question, yes typically wins, whether it says, do you want to protect a woman's right to an abortion, or do you want to ban abortion altogether? Functionally, yes if you were a betting man, Vegas would put money on yes. Either question, yes. So that's where control and the coercion and the rhetorical tricks and all of this stuff plays into that, but not knowing how the speaker is going to handle some of this, not knowing the details of the speakership, not knowing the deals that were cut, not knowing all of this, is swirling around. That's concerning. I don't think we have to worry about that, but I'm not sure. And that's why I so clearly am like, someone come and talk with us about it, because I think we deserve to know. I think everybody deserves to know. But with all that being said, thank you so much for watching the show. If you're watching on YouTube, be sure to hit the subscribe button and the thumbs up button to help us get in the algorithm. As you probably see, if you're subscribed already, we do clips of the show. So if you miss any part of it, you will see clips on usually Mondays and Fridays. You can follow the show on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok at Greater Society Media. You can follow me on Twitter at Conno Hanlon. You can support the show for as little as $5 a month on patreon.com/Greater Society Media. And you can listen to the show on basically any platform that you can find podcasts. And be sure to leave a review if you listen to on the Apple or Spotify. That will really help us as well. With all of that being said, thank you so much. Make sure to prepare yourself for the 2023 election cycle that will be kicking off much sooner than you would expect because of school board and all of that stuff. It'll be a blast, and that's the most sarcastic I could be in closing here. But until next week. Programming note: next week I have the Doylestown Democrats special CBSD Central Bucks School Board meeting in conjunction with the Advocates for Inclusive Education nonpartisan group, talking about the Central Bucks School District. So if that is something that you're interested in going to via Zoom or in person, you can reach out to me directly on social media, or you can email the show greatersocietymedia@gmail.com, and I'll get you on the list. But it's at the same time as this show, so I will pre-record the show for next week. There will be a show, but it'll be pre-recorded. So what that will be, I don't know yet, but it will be pre-recorded. But again, if you want to go to that, you want more information, please feel free to reach out. But until then, stay safe. Peace.